I uncovered the horrifying truth behind the Hunt family massacre that left cops in tears. I never should have opened that door. The moment my hand touched the cold knob, a chill shot through me. A feeling of dread sat heavy in my stomach. What lay behind it? I had heard the stories, the whispers of a family torn apart, of screams that echoed through the halls of that decaying house. But I was drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. My routine was simple. Wake up, go to work, come home. It was an ordinary life. Until that day. The day I decided to investigate the old Hunt place. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that danced among the trees, and the air was thick with an unsettling silence. As I approached, a heaviness enveloped me. The abandoned house loomed ahead, its paint peeling like old skin, windows black and empty. Inside, darkness swallowed me. The cold air bit at my skin. I stepped carefully, my heart racing. I could hear faint whispers. Was it the wind? Or something more sinister? A shiver crept down my spine. I moved deeper, noticing how dust motes floated through the beam of my flashlight, like ghosts trapped in time. Every creak of the floor made my pulse quicken. I turned a corner and saw an old, battered family portrait hanging askew on the wall. The eyes of the parents seemed to follow me, staring with a haunting sadness. The children looked forced to smile, trapped in a frame of terror. I leaned closer, my breath hitching. Their faces were pale, eerily contorted. What had happened to them? Then came the sound, soft, shuffling footsteps behind me. I froze. Panic filled my chest. I wasn't alone. I spun around, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Nothing. Just shadows twisting in the corners of my vision. My heart hammered in my ears. I stepped back, bumping into a table that clattered ominously. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of unrecognizable words. Objects began to shift, just slightly, a chair sliding, a door creaking. The air felt thick, choked with history and malice. My hands trembled, sweat beading on my forehead. I needed to leave. I turned, running toward the door, ready to escape this nightmare. But as I did, the atmosphere changed. The whispers turned to laughter, mocking. And then, the shadows coalesced into a figure. Dark and menacing. I knew I was trapped. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. The figure stepped forward, its face obscured. I felt a presence pressing down on me, suffocating, drowning. My heart stopped, the world stilled. I had crossed a line and there was no going back. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The entity loomed closer, its presence imbued with a chilling certainty, and my instincts screamed at me to flee. Yet, my feet felt as though they were anchored to the floor, unable to comply. The darkness enveloped me, thick and alive, pulsating with a malevolent energy that tugged at the threads of my sanity. I forced myself to focus past the figure, trying to find the door. The once familiar hallway morphed into a labyrinth, the space contracting around me, twisting like a surreal dream from which I couldn't wake. "This is your home now," a voice rasped, a sound so cold that it seemed to freeze the very air around me. My heart dropped into my stomach as the implications of the words settled like lead. I knew in that instant, deep down, I wouldn't be leaving this house unscathed. Suddenly, the whispers merged into a single voice, clear, sorrowful, and right beside me. "Help us." It was barely more than a breath, but the desperation was palpable. I turned, seeking out the source, but the figure remained a shadow, unmoving, as if waiting to reveal itself at the right moment. An unforgiving watchman over its cursed domain. In an act of sheer will, I wrestled control over my legs and stumbled back, pushing against the oppressive weight around me. That's when I noticed the walls, how they whispered, veins of old wood bleeding memories into the air. There were remnants of wallpaper peeling away to reveal the groaning skeletons beneath. Framed photographs littered the floor, shattered glass reflecting the grim energy swirling in the room. I caught glimpses of the Hunt family again, their smiles now far more sinister, as if they were caught in moments just before despair. Just as I thought I could escape the room, the laughter erupted once more, but it was no longer mocking, it was jubilant, with an undercurrent of triumph. The shadows twisted, rigid with glee at my discomfort, and the door slammed shut, locking me in with the figure. Thudding footsteps echoed behind me. I turned to find a younger version of one of the children from the portrait, staring at me with wide, hollow eyes. Her mouth opened in an unnatural grin that split her face, stretching far too widely, more a grimace than a smile. "Why didn't you help us?" she croaked, her voice splintering as though each word cracked like ice beneath my feet. "We cried for you." My stomach churned, a maelstrom of guilt and horror gripping me. I am sorry. I didn't know," I stammered, the weight of her eyes pinning me in place as the laughter swelled. A tremor ran through the house. Was it an earthquake? The walls pulsing, a heartbeat of their own, echoing the agony of their captives. I felt something shift behind me, an electric charge sparking the air. I turned, my flashlight illuminating a grotesque tableau. Countless shadowy figures emerged from the walls, faces twisted in disbelief, mouths agape as if they'd all once cried out for salvation but were instead absorbed into this hellish tableau. Each one was an echo of despair, twisted into horror, not unlike the twisted furniture and misaligned portraits. They began reaching out to me, silent screams caught within their parched throats, faces straining against the very fabric of the void. I could see their desires painted in their eyes to be freed from this cursed existence. "Help us!" they cried, a cacophony that rose beyond the chaos. It wrapped around me, squeezing like a vice. Desperation twisted my chest. "What do you need?" I cried, but instead of an answer, the shadows grew larger, drawing closer with icy fingers that brushed against my skin. The child, smiling wider still, whispered, "Come play with us." A gentle voice threaded through the chaos, as though it could soothe the tide of anxiety, but the laugh that accompanied it shattered the illusion entirely. The presence surged forward, looming over me. With a flick of its wrist, my flashlight flickered, then died, plunging me into absolute darkness. My breath quickened as everything around me thickened, a suffocating blanket of fear wrapping tight. I was utterly alone in a realm inhabited by regret and rage. "Join us," the figures murmured, their words now a seductive chant. And in that moment, I felt a tug within me, a magnetic pull promising secrets, truths, and a darker kinship I had never sought. Would I give in? Or could I break free from the spectral web before it consumed me whole, mind and soul? Fighting the encroaching power, I turned and sprinted toward the last vestige of light, pounding my fists against the door. "Let me out!" My voice rang out, despairing, but in the very act of desire for escape, the shadows retreated, whispers swirling into a single word that etched itself into my mind with dreadful clarity. "Stay." With renewed panic, I pounded harder. The door swung open and there, on the threshold, stood the lifeless body of my own reflection, hollowed eyes shimmering with dark delight. I gasped as it stepped into the dim light, mouthing the words I dared not say, "You're one of us now." And with one final push, the door slammed shut behind me, pitching me into the dark, forever cryptic, forever lost. A suffocating silence pressed down on me as I stood in complete darkness, an emptiness that reached into my very core. My heart battered against my ribcage, a frantic dance of survival drowning out the spectral whispers. An unfamiliar scent crept into my nostrils. It was thick and rotten, the fader of decay lingering like a fog. My thoughts raced, each pulse magnified by the pulse of the house, an entity alive with malignant glee, feasting on my fear. "You're one of us now." The mocking words echoed in my mind, reverberating like a curse. I stumbled backward, hand bracing against the cold door that had just acted of its own will, imprisoning me further in this twisted fate. The shadows around me thickened, swirling in chaotic patterns that beckoned and recoiled, taunting with promises of eternal misery. That I could hear a clattering sound, like distant chains rattling, and the unmistakable sound of nails on wood, a scratching, scrambling drawl that seemed to creep closer. Panic surged through me, and I darted to the side, heart racing. In the fractured light pooling from an unseen source, I caught another glimpse of the faces trapped within the walls. Their mouths were now agape in futile screams, eyes wide and beseeching, imploring me to rescue that which could never be saved. Help! I screamed into the crushing void, my voice swallowed by the yawning chasm of despair that echoed all around me. But the shadows only danced in response, flickering as if they relished my terror. I ventured deeper into the house, the air charged with a sinister energy, each corner swirling with secrets long buried. "Play with us." The child's voice echoed again, a sing-song refrain that sliced through the darkness. It seeped into my bones, chasing away the remnants of resolve. I shook my head, unwilling to succumb to this dread chant. Yet, my legs betrayed me. Compelled by something unseen, I found myself wandering toward the parlor, where the gasping breaths called with increased urgency. Inside, the room appeared unrecognizable, warped beyond the geometries of reality. Framed portraits of the Hunt family hung crookedly on the walls, the faces shifting amidst subtle shadows, eyes that glimmered with malevolence tracking my movements. The decorative furniture had taken on grotesque shapes, a chair morphed slowly into a despotic figure with long fingers, elongated as if straining to reach me. A voice, so unnaturally sweet it sickened me, whispered from the corner. They loved the games. As if in approval, shadowy figures, half-formed and pulsating with the heartbeat of the house, swarmed the room, laughter mingling with the whispers. I felt droplets of something oily and warm splash against my skin. Was it blood? In a frenzy, I turned toward the door, but it had vanished, replaced by a wall of writhing shadows, stretching into a void that defied coherence. My breath hitched, and I felt something cold slithering around my ankle, dragging me down with the force of 1,000 hands. The figures grew more defined, I could discern features, anguished faces twisted in torment. "Join us." The chorus swelled, vibrating through my very being, and I was torn between wanting to escape and an insidious longing to yield to their whispers, to join this nightmarish symphony. "Play the game." My vision blurred as I was pulled deeper into their eldritch tableau. The child emerged from the mass, eyes sparkling with a ghastly hunger. "Well, show you," she whispered, her smile now revealing rows of sharp teeth, a predatory glee illuminating her hollowed face. Another tremor surged through the house as reality warped further, and I gasped. From the floorboards, shapes began to rise, filth and grime unfurling into humanoid forms that began to sway and dance. They sang in distorted voices, beckoning me to join their eternal carousel of despair. My body rebelled, frozen in fear and dread, and I felt the child's cold fingers grip mine. "It's fun," she urged, the shadows closing in like a bad dream from which there was no waking. The vibrant life of the outside world turned into a distant memory, a thin veil I could no longer touch. "Help us play. Help us stay." The chorus chanted, the air thick with anguish, the walls thrumming with restless spirits searching for release. As everything began to cascade into a tempest of wailing faces and grasping fingers, the cold despair of the Hunt family's fate settled heavily on my shoulders. Just when I thought all hope was snuffed out, a blinding light pierced through the encroaching darkness, illuminating a corner of the room where a flickering shadow revealed a door, ajar. My breath caught at the chance for escape, but as I reached for it, the shadows screamed in unison, "You won't leave us." The moment I stepped toward the light, icy fingers wrapped around my throat, pulling me back, pulling me into the shadows until I heard the words echo again, drowning me in despair. "Once you come in, you can never leave." The closing of the door slammed shut behind me with a decisive thud that reverberated in my skull, sealing my escape from the outside world. The sudden cacophony of laughter rose with unholy glee, terrifying jubilation swirling around me, and then it hit me, I was not merely trapped. I was now part of a new, sinister family. I turned to see their faces, countless lost souls with wide, haunted eyes, all of them grinning. I was no longer the outsider, I was one of them. I opened my mouth to scream, but the liquid filth of despair gushed forth, washing over me, and as I looked to the flickering shadows that danced with life and death before me, I could only whisper, "What have I done?" The shadows surged forward, and just as I thought I understood their malignant play, a voice hissed from the dark, a predatory whisper that curled around my mind, "Welcome home forever." The shadows coalesced around me, their forms flickering like fireflies snared in a gale, illuminating a grotesque tableau that mirrored the very essence of horror. The cacophony of laughter swirled into a wicked symphony, drowning my thoughts. No longer was I simply an observer to suffering, I felt their memories rush through my veins, each pulse a reminder that I was now intertwined with their fate. The children's voices harmonized as they danced, their movements a perplexing mixture of grace and rage, frayed edges of joyful innocence woven with pure evil. I stumbled backward, trying to separate myself from this insidious community, but the walls seemed to claw at me as if recognizing a betrayer among their ranks. Frantic breaths escaped my lungs, each gasp laced with the realization that I had now become prey in a game too twisted to comprehend. My new family members didn't just want companionship, they thirsted for my essence. They mirrored my emotions, amplifying each pang of terror until it overwhelmed me, dragging me deeper into their collective sorrow. I fought against the tide, battered by their sorrowful wails. My past and my identity were fading, but I grasped desperately at the edge of memory, trying to unsnap the connections interwoven around my soul. Then, as if sensing my distress, the little girl approached again, her eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. "What's wrong?" she teased, tilting her head like a curious bird. "Don't you want to play?" I flinched at the thought of games. The echoes of the Hunt Family Massacre flooded my thoughts, innocent laughter cut short by horrific acts, complicit with the grotesque roots of this house. "Please," I choked, "I don't want to play." My pleading sounded weak, thinned by the disdain swirling around me, and her grin merely widened, a grin that spoke of dread and delight. "Play with us." The chorus rose again, wrapping around me like a noose, and in an attempt to break free, my body fell to the ground, a lash of desperation firing through me. But instead of despairing, the shadows erupted into a frenzy, their joy manifesting as they jumped, the chaos thickening, a living testament to the horror that had claimed them. Beneath my feet, the floor surged, the wood splintering and bending like a writhing beast in agony. I was thrust into a nightmarish drumming of hearts. The shadows grew more defined, faces emerging, each carrying a twisted tale of closure and vengeance. I shuddered as I recognized the tortured visage of a woman, her lips forming soundless words, each one punctuated by a sharp intake of air that seemed to pierce my very essence. "Stay with us forever," the whispers swirled anew, intensifying. I frantically clawed at the floor, desperate for some solidity, but the very structure beneath me morphed and undulated like a wave, carrying me further down into the cyclone of horror. Every failed breath was saturated with grief. Every heart that thudded in my ears was calling for vengeance, not respite. No. I screamed, throwing my head back as the weight of 1,000 mist pleas washed over me, suffocating my will to escape. "I don't belong here." But the shadows continued their relentless pull, whispering lies draped in sweetness. "We're family now," their voices amalgamated, intoxicating me in shared suffering. I fought harder, feeling tendrils of despair wrap around my limbs. Resistance only deepened the hold they had on my sanity. A new voice suddenly sliced through the dark cacophony, deep and commanding, resonant like a death knell. "Bring her to us, my children," it commanded, and a new dread slithered through the air, heavier than the rest. Out from the depths emerged figures of monumental proportions, clad in flowing, tattered robes that taperingly vanished into the shadows, as if they were prolonging their existence beyond this realm. Twisted, elongated hands reached for me, and the stench of decay enveloped my senses anew. "The time has come," the spectre continued, its voice threading between the rattle of chains. Then my eyes flicked to the wall behind me, horrific visions projected like a twisted play, the Hunt family, their faces deformed and twisted in excruciating agony as they witnessed what they had wrought upon each other. A tribal dance of death, their fates laughing together in unison while crimson splattered the walls. An unholy occult performance of despair.no. I gasped again, overwhelming panic surging with volcanic intensity, my hands shaking in terror as the figures drew closer. As they approached, I saw behind them through the cracked walls the silhouettes of other worlds, other lives trapped within the house's grotesque embrace, each whispering my name, drawing me into a torrent of horrors untold. With a final surge of adrenaline, I pushed against the incoming tide. "You can't have me!" I screeched, but the shadows surged relentlessly. I fought against the screams, the laughter, and took a staggering step backward only to feel a wall of cold flesh hit my back, the shadows embracing me once more. "Join us," the child's voice came again, softer now, seductive. And just as I began to succumb to their whispers, a deafening crash echoed throughout the house, causing the walls to crumble and the lights to flicker violently. In a flash of blinding white, a rift of energy tore open in the center of the chaos, pulsating with an unknown frequency that sent the shadows reeling away. "Run!" An otherworldly voice howled, resonating through the hall, but as I dared to turn towards the beckoning light, a firm hand intercepted my wrist, heavy and impossibly cold, clenching tighter with a sinister laugh that rattled my bones. "Stay forever," it hissed as I saw the torment of countless souls behind the hand that gripped me, and I realized with a morbid jolt that escape was just as sinister, perhaps what lay beyond that light would be even worse. And as I hovered between the beckoning realm of darkness and the blinding escape, the world around me threatened to collapse inward, the shadows howling, "You cannot leave. You must choose, and the choice will be your end." The shadows recoiled from me, their once insatiable grip loosening as the blinding light pulsed insistently in front of my eyes. Yet, I could feel the coldness of the hand wrapped around my wrist digging deeper, merging fear with dread. Every instinct screamed for me to run towards the defiant glow, but the grip tightened, binding me to hellish memories that crawled through my mind, revealing parts one wished never to relive. "Choose." The voice howled, now reverberating through the rotting walls, vibrating in a rhythm that matched the thrumming of my heart. "You cannot linger here." I glanced back at the darkness behind me, shivering as I recognized the faces, the children, still bound in their dance of sorrow, mouths agape in silent screams. Their ethereal forms melded with the darkness around them, twisting in a macabre reproduction of innocence spiraled into something vile. The laughter had softened, now a chilling chant that echoed my deepest fears. "Stay, stay forever," they murmured, a binding lullaby meant to encapsulate my will. The cold hand tightened, and I turned back just in time to see the towering figures returning, their faceless forms illuminated only by the dimming light. They began to advance, their movements like specters unfurling gossamer threads. Without thinking, I tore away from the grip, stumbling toward the blinding light, my heart hammering as I fought against the chilling tendrils that wrapped around my legs, determined to drag me back into despair. But the light pulsated erratically, flickering like a dying star, almost seeming to sense my presence, a beacon summoning me to its side. Suddenly, the cacophony crescendoed, the shadows screeching in a frenzy as the towering figures swelled closer, their whispers growing sinister with each footfall. "Do you seek to escape, child? You cannot outrun suffering." Their voices slithered, barbed with malice, just as I reached for the edge of the light. A massive shadow burst forth with an ear-piercing shriek, the figure looming over me, its face stitched together with darkness and dripping with grotesque agony. "You hunger for freedom, but have you contemplated the price?" Heart racing, I propelled myself forward, each desperate step fueled by sheer terror. The edges of the light began to splinter, revealing glimpses of a world marred with screams, shadows beckoning me back into their grasp. "Come back. You belong to us." The scarecrow figure shrieked, its voice a shrill wind that sent a scream spiraling from my throat. The darkness swirled, threatening to blot out the light completely, a vortex eager to reclaim its wayward child. I reached the threshold, the brilliance washing over me like a wave of hope, but the echoing lament of familiar heartbreak twisted my resolve. "Remember us. You can't leave." They cried, the children's laughter morphing into a dissonant chant that wound through me. "Choose." I heard the otherworldly voice beckon yet again, anchored by layers of despair and regret. Profound terror seized me. What if the escape they offered was simply another prison, an illusion veiled by light? And in that moment of indecision, time warped and twisted. The energy around me exploded, flinging me backward as the light shattered in an eruption of color. The brightness engulfed me, penetrating my skin, drawing forth screams from the recesses of my being as centuries of anguish surged through like an unchained beast. Then, with a decisive thrum, I felt the sinister grip return, but now twisting me into shadows, condensing my essence, pushing me further into the darkness. Terrified and agonized, I was thrust into a place that felt familiar yet utterly foreign, twisted vistas of cool moonlight and waving shadows, where shattered glass turned to crystal seeds piercing through the fabric of existence. You will witness their pain, the haunting voice echoed around me, and the world shifted, revealing glimpses of cursed moments flickering like candle flames drowning in wax, lifeless eyes staring back when hope should have prevailed. Then something repositioned behind me, a figure. Cloaked in blood-red mist stepped forward, revealing straggly hair and hollowed cheeks. "I remember you," it whispered, extending a finger towards me that dripped with sorrow. "You chose your own fate, and now it has come full circle." I recoiled in horror as I recognized the visage from the depths of my nightmarish dreams, the tortured spirit of a Hunt, eyes glistening with both malice and regret. "Stay, and you shall become like us," it cooed, voice dripping with a predatory hunger that made my skin crawl. "You will learn the truth." As it reached out, the shadows scurried closer, and dread tightened around me like a vice while light began to warp, shifting into grotesque shapes. I could hear the cries, the truth beckoning to me, hovering just beyond the veil. But was it worth the price? Just before the ravenous darkness could engulf me fully, I felt a burst of heat behind me, an unknown force breaking through the fabric of shadows. "Don't trust it!" a voice cried out, alive and human, as if reaching across time, and in that moment of complete bewilderment, I was hurled toward the darkness, heart pounding against my ribcage, and the rift widened, revealing a darkness so thick it could swallow the moon. And as the figure behind me shrieked and the shadows clamored to reclaim their prey, I realized the terrifying truth: the choice was never mine to make. As the void erupted around me, suffocating all hopes of survival, I screamed, "What lies beyond?" And then, the floor beneath me cracked with a deafening pop as a pulsating red glow erupted in the center of the room, illuminating the horrors of my past, and I was drawn into the merciless embrace of fate. The last thing I saw was the silhouette of the child dancing amidst the chaos, her eyes alight with glee as the shadows howled in unison. "Welcome home," they whispered, as a blackened wave swept over me, drowning me in an abyss from which I feared there would be no return. The shadows receded slowly, as if yielding to a new presence, a presence more ancient and dreadful than any specter. The air crackled with a malevolent energy that encircled me, a choking fog that seeped into my lungs and thrust its icy fingers around my heart. There was a weight to the stillness, an anticipation that thrummed like the taut strings of a bow, prepared to unleash chaos at any moment. That I blinked through the shroud, the remnants of the past swirling around me, whispering secrets of despair and loss. As the brightness dimmed, revealing the twisted remnants of what had once been my sanctuary, I found myself alone, surrounded by the grotesque tableau of memories, not memories of happiness, but of irrevocable sorrow. The air was thick with the fragrance of decay, a mingling of earth and something far more sinister that evidently tainted the very fabric of this realm. The ground trembled beneath my feet, sending tremors of dread crawling up my spine. I moved hesitantly, my gaze locking onto the fractured remnants of the walls, where paintings of the Hunt family hung, their expressions a mixture of serenity and underlying madness. Forever caught in a moment of misplaced joy, from the corner of my eye, I spotted movement, tattered curtains billowing in an unfelt breeze, whispers escaping like timid creatures seeking refuge. Each step I took echoed back with unsettling clarity, tainted by the memory of laughter that had morphed into anguish. I felt their presence, each member of the Hunt family flitting through the shadows, forever trapped in their sorrow, forever watching. I reached a doorway that had been constricted by obscuring vines, blackened with age and grief. Visions surged uninvited, images of the night the world collapsed, the screams echoing like mournful dogs through the hollowed halls of my mind. I recalled the flickering lights of the lanterns, the way they beckoned with their warmth while destruction loomed just beyond the threshold. With a shudder, I stepped inside, my breath hitching as I was engulfed in darkness, the oppressive weight pressing against my chest. The room smelled of burnt wood and moldering memories. In the center lay a dilapidated table adorned with strange symbols carved deep into its surface, symbols of protection, of binding, perhaps warnings of what lay in wait. The ominous resonance of despair clung to every nook, vibrating deep within the marrow of my bones. I hesitated, my fingertips gliding over the surface of the wood, feeling the energy pulsing like a heartbeat beneath my touch. It felt alive, a sentinel of the past, and for a brief moment, I contemplated the horrors that had unfolded here, yet, just as the shouldering dark seemed to quell my resolve, I heard Ida soft weeping, a supplication woven into the fabric of the air. I turned sharply, drawn to the slender figure huddled in the corner. It was a girl, her form flickering like a candle's flame, shifting in and out of focus. Her sorrowful eyes bore into me, shimmering with ancient pain and unfathomable fear. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice laced with the despair of countless souls. "You have to stop him." Heart racing, I wanted to step closer, to reach out, but the warning crept back through my mind. The Hunt family's grim fate hinted at something worse lurking in the unknown. I swallowed hard, recalling the faceless entities that had pursued me, the darkness that feasted on vulnerability. Suddenly, a shudder rippled through the room. The table began to vibrate as if reacting to my presence, and the markings illuminated with an eerie glow. I was rooted in place, the girl's voice seeping into my mind. "You cannot trust him. He is here." A hulking shape formed in the doorway, and a chill of recognition gripped me. He was the specter I had glimpsed before, a remnant of malice resurrected, a grotesque embodiment of the vengeance that had consumed the Hunt family. "Foolish child," he hissed, the darkness around him writhing in anticipation. "She is part of the curse, just as you will be soon." The girl shrieked, her eyes wide with terror, and I felt the room constricting further, the air sizzling with malevolent energy. My heart thundered in my chest as shadows surged forth, claiming the remaining light, blending the girl and the figure in a gruesome transformation. "Choose her or choose yourself," he taunted, the walls trembling as the very structure of reality seemed to shudder at his words. "But know this, both are doomed. There is no escape." With that, the shadows exploded outward like a swarm of locusts, dark hands grasping toward me, each one laden with whispers of despair. The girl's form flickered and began to fade, swallowed by the howling wind that spiraled through the room. I backed away, paralyzed by fear, knowing that behind the spreading darkness lurked the harbinger of my fate, but the girl's eyes held a promise, a thread of hope amid the encroaching despair. As the rift widened, darkness enveloped me, shimmering with the wails of the lost, and I heard only one statement above the noisy, a truth whispered in the chaos: "He knows you, you belong to him." And with a final breathless gasp, the world slipped away, leaving behind a chilling laughter that dissolved into the blackness, engulfing all that I was. In that moment, as dread consumed me, I wondered if perhaps I had already made my choice, one I would soon regret. The darkness held its breath as I plummeted through the void, the ground beneath my feet erased, and the air thickened with the weight of silence. For a fleeting moment, I was suspended in an unending abyss, a reality where time unraveled like taut string, leaving my mind grasping at frayed memories. The cacophony of echoes dimmed, but the laughter persisted, a cruel melody that seeped into every corner of my soul. Then, with a sudden jolt, I found myself laying on the cold, splintered floor of what appeared to be another room, the moans of the past still hanging heavy in the air. The remnants of the Hunt family lingered like a dark perfume, an intimate violation seeping into the marrow of my essence. As I pushed myself to sit up, a creeping sense of familiarity curled around me, as if I had returned to a grotesque play where the actors had long since departed but their curses lingered. I blinked through the near-total darkness. The only light came from a single flickering candle positioned precariously on a windowsill, its glow revealing a warped reflection in the cracked glass, an empty face staring back at me from another time. I recoiled, sensing that whatever gazed back held multitudes of secrets entwined within its hollow expression. The cold air was punctuated by a sudden crash, a deafening shatter that echoed like a gunshot, ripping through the thick fabric of silence. I jerked my head toward the source, a doorway partially concealed by a tangle of weeds and darkness. Shadows danced beyond it, writhing and stretching into grotesque forms that seemed alive with malice. They were searching for something or someone. Slowly, unease coiled around my heart. I had to move, but the moment I stood, a surge of vertigo gripped me, overwhelming reality with nausea. I leaned against the wall, feeling its pulse like a heartbeat, then decided to press on, my instincts sharper and more frantic. Each step echoed, reverberating through the bones of the structure. As I approached the door, an intrusive whisper brushed against my ear, chilling me to the bone. "He's waiting," it taunted, scraping my thoughts, igniting the embers of panic. I cast a frantic glance down the dim corridor that opened before me, and there, at the bend, a flicker of unsettling motion caught my eye. It was the girl again, standing just out of reach, obscured in the depths of shadow. "Help me," she implored again, fragile and wavering like an errant song in the wind. But I was ensnared, compelled to consider this steady pull against the gnawing presence lurking behind. That ominous shadow, the chilling specter of chaos, was not merely relegated to darkness, it thrived, gathering strength as I weighed my choices, the chance of evil or the promise of salvation. That I pressed forward, drawn amid the veil where light dared not tread. As I reached out, fingers trembling, the air grew dense, wrapping around me like an embrace. The girl smiled, but it was a countenance marked with sorrow and hopelessness. "He is near," she whispered, her words mounting a paralyzing fear. In that moment, the candle flickered violently, dancing against the inevitable dark that began to crest against the threshold. A figure loomed, shrouded in an incomprehensible depth. The embodiment of despair transformed, limbs extending in unspeakable grotesques ripping through the air as he slithered closer, disrupting the very flow of reality itself. His eyes, black holes that consumed all light, locked onto mine, and in his gaze, I saw the twisted remnants of the Hunt family, mournful and crying, encased within his diabolical embrace. "Do you understand now?" he growled, his voice a chilling echo that shuddered through the air. "They cannot help you because they, too, have made their choices." The room twisted and warped again as I staggered back, the girl's form dimming, fading into a wisp of smoke, while the laughter wrapped tighter around me, binding me to his presence. My breath quickened, me reality splintering, teetering on the edge of what was left of my sanity. And then the shadows parted as if yielding to a cruel revelation. Within their depths, a mosaic of faces emerged, contorted in anguish, family, friends, all bearing witness to a fate that froze my blood. Each one had been cast into oblivion, their stories hollowed out, existing only to feed the monstrosity that towered over them. He was their master, the predator who feasted. "Now, will you choose?" he rasped, voice like a whirlwind that drowned out my thoughts. With that, he stepped forward, a blight against the candlelight, extending a hand that shimmered with the sorrow of countless souls. "Choose, and remember, you cannot break my hold nor escape the depths of your fate." In that moment, the ground shook violently beneath my feet, fracturing reality itself around us, leaving me no choice but to scream, to fight against the flood of darkness swallowing my essence. I felt an icy grasp clutch my throat, squeezing tighter, forcing me to confront the inescapable dread that overshadowed everything, and as the walls crumbled, succumbing to the chaos unleashed by his demand, I was presented with a stark choice, a choice that would detonate futures and reshape destinies. Would I plunge into the darkness of the unknown or clothe myself in the remnants of hope? As the shadows surged forward, ready to claim me, I grasped for the light of the girl's memory, willing to resist. But the abyss loomed larger, and before I could utter a word, reality blurred. A scream ripped through the darkness, echoing in tandem with my impending despair, and then it hit me, piercing and terribly, a terrible truth lost in the very fabric of existence. "You're not here to break the curse, you're here to fulfill it." With a horrific realization, I found myself standing at the precipice of fate, with the twisted laughter of the Hunt family rising like a tide behind me, bracing for the inevitable plunge into darkness. The shadows panted like a beast, their breath cold and rancid around me, as I teetered on the edge of the abyss. Every muscle in my body summoned a different choice, yet an unseen force rooted me to the shattered floor. The decision weighed heavy on my soul, bondage crafted by the sinister being who leaned closer, snatching away any semblance of hope I had clung to. "Choose," he thundered once more, darkness spilling from his elongated fingertips, coiling around my wrist like a serpent. Choose or be consumed. And there, amidst the twisted labyrinth of shadows, the faces of the condemned flickered into focus with the urgency of a nightmare, eyes wide with terror, mouths twisted in silent screams. They were not mere figments, they were souls, tethered to his vile essence, their pleas weaving an intricate tapestry of despair that I closed my eyes against the unbearable sight, forcing the image of the girl into my mind, the delicate bloom amid a desolate field. The candlelight waned, flickering like the heartbeat of a dying star, and I longed to escape the suffocating grasp of this dark entity. No. I refused to choose, I forced out through clenched teeth, my breath a soft defiance against the cacophony of the Hunt family's sorrow. In response, his laughter boomed, a cacophony that shattered the fragile resolve I had left. You believe yourself free and tarnished by dread, but every choice has led you here, to me. With the brazen certainty of crossing a threshold, he began to unspool the fabric of memory before me. Visions swirled like storm clouds, revealing scenes of violence that chilled my bones. I was not just an observer, I was ensnared in the past with the Hunt family, living their last moments, a chaos of blood, desperation, and the sharp tang of betrayal. They stood as haunted specters, eyes filled with malignant clarity, condemning me through the lenses of their impending doom. This was your choice, echoed the girl's voice. Her slight frame trembled against the ebb of darkness, an anchor pulling me into the depths of despair. You cannot deny what you did just to survive. Her words knotted around me, sharp and suffocating. Fragments of memories flickered, struggling to grasp elusive truths I never wanted to face. With a piercing scream, the room became a macabre theater of surging shadows, shift and swell around me, revealing snippets of the Hunt family's massacre. I saw them, their laughter, their joy momentarily alive before transformation twisted them grotesquely. Murderer! A voice shrieked. It was the mother, grief-stricken, like a phantom begging for release from the binds of the past. You took everything from us. The shadows united, merging into a single wave of palpable rage, ready to crash down and suffocate me in their wrath. I stumbled back, only to collide with the cold wall, the grotesque horrors amplifying around me, echoing through the skeletal frame of the house, the haunting cries intertwining, blurring the lines between the present and the past. Enough! I screamed, summoning the remnants of courage lurking beneath my despair. I can't be the monster you think I am. But as if such defiance fed into his armor of darkness, he drew near enough that I could glimpse the terrible fusion of sorrow and anger that dwelled behind his hollow gaze. You are nothing. Like all of them, you had the choice and chose fear. You brought them to me willingly. The walls vibrated, the grotesque faces merging into a tumultuous cacophony of shrieks and sobs, and I felt the very air around me shudder with rage. Reality again twisted violently, the shadows tore at my sanity, pleading, seeking justice not for their lives, but for the truth that hung heavy like a shroud over their final moments. And just when I thought they would engulf me completely, the ground trembled with an intensity one didn't understand. The candle flickered one last time before the glass cracked, splintering outward with a resounding pop, plunging us into darkness with only a whisper of light remaining, a frail spark of humanity amidst the consuming void. And amidst the chaos, a horrific realization gripped my heart, a heartbeat that wasn't mine. With chilling clarity, I felt it pulse against the floor, the whispered echo of the Hunt family resounding in unison. You will take our place, they breathed, voices entwined in an anguished hymn. Panic surged, but then the shadows parted again, and there, illuminated in morbid clarity, stood a figure smiling, serene, a terrifying juxtaposition against the moans reverberating through the room. It was the girl, but separated from the smile I once clung to. Now her eyes glinted with a knowing, the innocent facade cracked to reveal a sinister depth. You've made your choice, she murmured, her face a mask of tragic beauty, gleaming under the sliver of light. The world tilted, my heart sank, and with one final glance into her wretched expression, the shadows surged forward, ushering me toward a fate I still could not comprehend. The grip of the Hunt family tightened, pulling me toward the brink, and I felt myself tearing at the seams of identity. Welcome back, they sang, laughter mingled with anguish, drawing me closer to the precipice from which there was no return. And in that moment, as the abyss closed in around me, I realized the horrifying truth. I was not just a spectator in this broken tale, I was its next chapter, but the author was not yet finished. The shadows writhed violently around me, a churning mass of anguish and despair, their shouts echoing in a dissonant symphony that clawed at my sanity. I staggered, fighting to understand how I could be both the observer and the subject in this relentless nightmare. The girl's specter loomed ahead, half-formed whispers spilling from her lips, tying me to a fate I could not escape. You will never be free. Her voice swelled, reverberating inside the hollow shell of my body, each syllable embedding itself deeper into my very being. And then, the room throbbed. A wrongness seeped through the air, heavier than death, more youthful than hope, a blend of decay and desire that settled deep within my bones. It was the palpable sensation of being watchedno, hunted. The remnants of the Hunt family were not the only souls doomed in this dark crucible. Something else prowled within the depths of the shadows, eyes gleaming like twin suns in the abyss. As a sudden gust howled through the gnarled rafters of the house, I felt a rush of eldritch energy. It was as if the very walls were breathing, their timber joints groaning with unspoken horrors. The shadows twisted violently, revealing glimpses of more faces, newer, more grotesque than before, caught mid-scream, each one seemingly more aware of the anguish surrounding them than the last. "You're one of them now," the faceless voices chanted, a maleficent chorus weaving a malignancy that seeped into my core. "Join us in our wretchedness. Break the cycle." Suddenly, the floor beneath me shuddered, and an awful crackling echoed through the space, sending tremors of dread racing up my spine. I spun around, desperately searching for an escape, but the way had vanished, swallowed by the malignant entity hungry for my fear. The darkness pulsed, morphing around me with every heartbeat, my own heartbeat falling in sync with the malevolent thrum that enveloped us. "Choose. Choose what you would sacrifice." The voice became a chaotic frenzy, an amalgamation of every tortured soul bound to this place, reverberating through me, tugging at the very essence of who I was. It was a grotesquerie, a demand wrapped in layers of loss, and I felt my mind fracturing under the weight. The girl stepped closer, her once innocent face contorted, shadows pulling at the edges of her being, transforming her into something unearthly. "The choice is not what you take, it's what you give away." Her voice faded into a low whisper, lost in the clutches of darkness that stirred restlessly around us. And then, I heard it again, the heartbeat. But it was rhythmically erratic now, thrumming not just in the floor but in the walls, vibrating through the very air. I gasped, urging me to listen. "It's here," the shadows hissed. "It awaits your sacrifice." The reality of my situation began to suffocate me. All around, glimpses of an unseen entity radiated, monstrous forms clawing through the shadows, dragging their grotesque features into the dim light. A nightmare with no definitive shape, only an insatiable thirst that I felt their intent crystallize. They were here not just to haunt me but to claim me, to add my essence to their wretched existence. A pulse of panic tightened my throat as I remembered the girl's final words. How could I possibly choose when it felt as if every moment was a dance with death? The intricate web of despair around me tightened once more, a sphincter of doom ready to capture the unwilling vessel of my soul. Amidst the commotion, a sudden realization unfurled within me. Hidden beneath the chaos lurked a singular truth. I had not just arrived in this hellscape, I was its architect, weaving threads of despair through the very fabric of my existence and those entwined with it. "No. I will not," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through me like a storm. But the shadows only laughed, a cacophony of despair echoing in a twisted mockery of my revolt. "You are already ours." With a final heave, I dashed toward the flickering spark of light, me only anchor against the rising tide of terror threatening to pull me under. As I lunged forward, the shadows whipped around me, seizing my limbs, their vice-like grip a blend of barbed wire and icy breath. "Scream, little sacrifice. Let us hear your truth." They howled, their voices a chilling cacophony of despair. And then, in that fleeting moment between shock and chaos, I found myself on the precipice of the abyss, teetering between choice and oblivion, my mind racing with possibilities. Just as the darkness swallowed me wholly, I heard her voice again, clear in the suffocating fog. "Your darkest fear is not your end, it is the beginning of something far worse. What remained of my will let out a piercing scream as the void closed in, and with one last, agonizing breath, I plummeted into the waiting darkness, no longer knowing who I was, but perhaps, only the first page of a much larger story waiting to unfold. The shadows shifted as I fell, swirling around me like tornadoes, each whisper a fragment of despair that wrapped tight around my consciousness. Silence settled in the wake of my scream, palpable and dense, pressing against my skin, suffocating me under the weight of centuries of agony. As I drifted deeper, I felt a pull to see, to understand, to confront the darkness that had been my prison and now attempted to consume me. Then I crashed into cold ground, hard and unyielding, darkness echoing like a laughter that seemed to mock my descent. Coughing, I scrambled to stand, the chill seeping through my clothes, and found myself in a vast, dimly lit chamber, walls lined with mirrors that flickered uneasily, reflecting ghastly images of the Hunt family, their eyes wide with horror. "Welcome home," hissed a voice, sending chills through my spine. The specter of the very being I'd come to fear loomed beyond the grotesque reflections, its face a miasma of sorrow and malevolence. "You thought you could escape? The cycle will only continue." I stumbled back in horror, my heart racing as I felt the walls close in, the mirrors warping reality, morphing the past with my own nightmare. Faces blurred together, a crumbling likeness of my own. Each visage screamed of my betrayal, my helplessness, clawing at my mind, feeding my guilt. "You released us but chose to join them," the specter said, its voice deepening. The shadows danced eagerly, flickering like flames, growing restless. "Now, you hold the key. Will you step back into the light or lock yourself away with the condemned?" With each word, I felt the weight of choices made, choices yet to come. The Hunt family had been mine to break the cycle of suffering. Yet here I stood, shackled by the very memories I longed to untangle. I was complicit in their misery, a participant in this dance of shadows, and those ethereal chains bound tighter with each realization. "And now, my dear," the figure continued, "you must decide whether to join the living or surrender to the dead. Choose wisely, for your undoing lies within your own shadow." Before I could engage my flight response, the mirrors erupted with furious energy, revealing endless versions of myself, all fragmented, each with a different choice, a different consequence. I saw a reflection of darkness woven deep into my smile, tainted by every missed opportunity, every fear I had let fester within me like a wound. The specter pushed closer, an unsettling smile spreading across its face. "You see? You cannot escape your fate." But a flicker of rebellion ignited in me, drawing strength from the realization that I was more than just their pawn. I was the culmination of their pain, yet I also held the power to rewrite our destiny. With a wild heart, I screamed, "I refuse to be a vessel for your vengeance." As the words flew from my lips, light erupted from the cracks in the mirrors, a blinding beam connecting me back to the world I had turned away from, one of life, humanity, choice. The specter's smile vanished, replaced with a mask of pure rage as I felt the chains weaken, the images shifting. Lips pulling back, it howled, "You dare defy us, I dare to live." I shouted back, stepping forward, anchoring myself deeper into my conviction. The mirrors crashed together, the fragmented reflections blending into a luminous tapestry of hope, sorrow, and redemption. Each shard fell away, releasing the souls trapped within, their cries mingling with my own as they were freed from this cursed existence. But just as the walls began to tremble, ripping apart the horrors that had claimed us all, a familiar voice echoed behind me. "You can't leave without us." I froze at the sound of the child's laughter, the joyous, innocent tinkle of it now laced with an unsettling echo. Turning slowly, I came face to face with the embodiment of all I had tried to escape, the twisted essence of the little girl whose spirit I had sought to save. "Help us play, we're almost complete." And suddenly it clicked. The cycle was not just about escaping the shadows, nor was it solely about living. It was a web of deceit, and I was still its unwitting architect. The chamber shifted once more, engulfing me deeper into a vortex of memories. The Hunt family cascaded around me in a whirl, their voices mixing into a cacophony of despair and hope, their faces flickering between anger and pleading. I gasped as I realized I was both savior and damnation. The child now offered the crown of my undoing by pleading for my acceptance into their cursed family. I was chosen to choose them, yet remained free in this painful riddle of existence. The room shook violently. Do I embrace their curse or forge a new path devoid of their shadows? The tether of my heart screamed with longing to flee, to forge a path of my own, but understood the consequence of such flight. You cannot abandon the kinship already bound, she called again, her eyes shimmering as the very light began to twist, vibrating with the energy of the Hunt family but shadows reigning eternal in the dark. The choice burned in my chest, heavy as stone. Then, desperation shifted into clarity. I leapt toward the illumination, feeling its warmth wash over me, the figures reaching towards me as if to claim me as their own. I felt the air pulse with the ancient tether of souls who'd lived, loved, and lost within these walls. And in the horrific realization that echoed through my mind, the truth of their suffering was not mine to carry. I was not the instrument of their pain, but a witness, and God for that reason, would not lay claim to their agony. With everything I had left, I shouted, "You will not claim me." The walls stretched and groaned, rupturing as the shadows flared, revealing a blinding light that cut through their despair and agony. The echoes combined into a deafening roar as I sprinted toward the light, the shadows stretching and stretching, their cries wailing in rejection and lament. Yet within that spectacle, I felt the thrill of liberation, a surge if you will, as the darkness clawed to chase me down. Desperate and furious, laughter erupted from the figure behind me, a bewildering ecstasy mingling with rage. You can't escape. You are still bound. But as I burst through the threshold of light, my final thought reverberated through the air like a crashing wavy, a neutral truth that sealed my fate. The mountain of shadows screeched as I broke through their malignant embrace. And just like that, in a heartbeat, I was free, truly, irrevocably free. But as I turned back into the abyss I had once known, securing my escape with the price of that moment, I witnessed the child's delighted grin blossom in the darkness, illuminating her own twisted essence, for the truth slammed down upon me like steel, a monstrous paradox echo concealed. I had forged my own destiny, but the echoes of the hunt would forever ripple in the shadows awaiting my return. With one last glance behind, meth darkness crowded, thick and unyielding. The word that twirled around my mind, too haunting to shake and insatiably familiar, surfaced within the fear-laden murmurs, as it slipped through the cracks: welcome home forever.